Duncan Plump and Karen Black, not to be confused with the famous actress who was in such iconic movies like The Day of the Locusts and Trilogy of Terror, are on their way to find out the truth of the Pizzagate conspiracy. Hi, my name is Dwayne Walker and you're watching Psycho Cinema Therapy Theater, where today we look at a movie that is actually quite timely for one that was made about in 2020, and that was of course when the lockdown started and conspiracy theories ran rampant, and one of those was Pizzagate, which alleged that a reptilian race were disguising themselves as people, and then they had a child sex ring that involved, of course, Democrats. And this was all centered around Comet Ping Pong Pizza in Washington, D.C., where for some reason it was alleged that pedophilia was taking place in the basement of the pizzeria, and of course there was no basement. But this did not stop a man from North Carolina from driving all the way up to Washington, D.C. to visit the Comet Ping Pong Pizza. And when he showed up, he shot at a lock, thinking that it housed deep, dark secrets, but unfortunately it probably only housed Parmesan cheese and all the necessities for pizza making. You would think that that would have debunked the whole theory, since there was no basement found there or anything coming close, but it didn't. They just kept growing and growing and growing. Enough now that we have this dark satire, a comedic satire that has been released, that even though it was made in 2020, what we know has happened on the Epstein Islands and Ranch, and what may be still happening today. This movie is quite relevant. This movie begins where Karen Black is starting her job at a newscast at a TV station, but she has some accidents there regarding her headsets, which keep falling off, and she's fired. But the woman who's starting the show is going live with talk of reptilian people who are taking over, and whatever is said there has got the protesters just lining up outside the window. And of course when she comes out, she is protected by Duncan Plump, who handles the crowd while she makes her getaway. And of course it turns out that Karen Black herself is an independent journalist who all this time has been using whatever angle she could get to get the truth about the Pizzagate conspiracies and the reptilian aliens. She follows Duncan to a white militia meeting, and she steps into that meeting and says that she wants to get to the bottom of Pizzagate. She wants to go to the pizzeria, and she wants to free the children who are locked up in boxes. And of course they believe this because they already believe that there's reptilian people in charge of everything. And as one of the characters says at the beginning of the movie, if you can believe that reptilian people are in charge of everything, why is it a stretch to imagine that children are being kept in cages in a basement? There's some infighting going on in this white militia group between a fellow named Philip and Duncan, and strangely enough, Duncan seems to be the cool-headed person, and he's the one who proves to be the most trigger-happy person around. So you can only imagine what it would be like with this other guy in charge. But they agree to let him go. He goes with Karen Black and off on their way to Austin. And some of the conversations they have, depending on your point of view, are either going to be quite hilarious or quite cringy, because you may have had conversations like this. It reminds me of when I was a teenager at a Christian school in Florida, and my friend and I were going to go out and look for Satanists who had allegedly targeted our church, according to a visiting preacher at the time called Lester Roloff. And he said that there was going to be reports to the press that our pastor was engaged in the most horrid of crimes, but if we see that, know that these are planted by Satanists. So we were going to get to the bottom of that. We were going to go find those Satanists. And I did a video of this, interestingly enough, back during the days of the lockdown as well, and I'll have that linked for you at the end of this video. And we went out, and I don't know what we would have done had we have found any Satanists, but years later, it turned out that the pastor of our church and the founder of our school was guilty of 30 years of child molestation. While we were out looking for demons, the real demons, metaphorically speaking, were in the church office. And looking back at that experience, it's quite obvious that all those child abuse conspiracies were just ways of diverting attention from those who really were committing child abuse. And I kind of feel nostalgic watching this movie of that attitude that I once had, where I'm looking, for an abuser behind, or a Satanist behind every bush. And then ultimately, I came away realizing that this movie is actually a pretty good movie to watch if you have a friend who may be a deep believer in these conspiracies. Or if you're somebody who does believe in these conspiracies, you may still enjoy the movie because of its satirical edge. This may be the kind of movie that can bring people together or drive us fully apart. Either way, I'm glad that such a movie was made. Anyway, they go down to Austin, Texas, and what happens when they go into the pizza and do the massacre is blacked out for us. We don't know. We have to piece it together, kind of like the very beginning of Reservoir Dogs. We have to piece together what happened based on the conversations that some of the people are having. Now, we don't see Karen Black anymore. We don't know if she's dead or alive, but we do see Duncan get in his vehicle and drive to her parents' house, where he basically tells them that she's okay, that she's alive, but he can't go into detail. And the mother helps him remove a bullet from his chest, but he locks him up in the closet and says, "I'll release you after I'm out of town." And then he goes out of town and goes back to his militia friends, and his militia friends are now looking at him like he's a suspect. And it's something, because what we're seeing here is what we see in real life. When we see the right trying to tear each other apart, even within all these groups, there are splits. There are group splits, and this movie highlights the group split. And unfortunately, the most level-minded person in this whole movie happens to be the most trigger-happy person in this whole movie, which doesn't bode well for the circumstances in this for the people in this film. But I would definitely recommend that you watch the Pizzagate Massacre. It will disturb you, it might make you laugh. It'll certainly be cathartic. Thank you for watching Psycho Cinema Therapy Theater. And if you like what you saw, then please like and subscribe to this video, and consider joining Psycho Cinema Therapy Theater as a member and get access to my 10-part course on the Psycho Cinema Therapy Theater Dream Academy. Learn how to use the secrets of film theory and apply them to your dreams. Thank you for watching.